Scientific innovation is only possible if it's accessible to everyone. By the way, if you have, I saw a lot of hands up for our panel here. If you want to come find them and ask them questions, please do so. We're about to have lunch. But medical innovation and scientific innovation is only possible if it's accessible to as many people as possible. And so our next panel is going to talk about policy and accessibility for who and when. So our next panel will be Jessica Flanigan, Niklas Anzinger, and Todd White, and it will be moderated by Alexander McCobin. So let's give it up for them, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Oh, thank you for inviting me for this. I was listening to you earlier.
All right. I know everyone is ready for lunch, but I want to make sure that this is not only a fun and engaging conversation, but a really practical one for everyone here. Because let me just start with a quick question for the audience. Raise your hand if you think patients don't have enough access right now to the longevity medicines of their choice.
Yay.
All right. So we're all starting from that same premise. We want to increase access. So the conversation we're going to have is, what can actually be done to accomplish that in the near future? And I want to begin by giving each of our panelists an opportunity to give a quick introduction for who you are and your background to lay the stage for this conversation. Todd, do you want to begin?
All right, so I'm the managing director of the Flanigan Initiative, which is actually preclinical, very basic research, but obviously all of this stuff has to actually eventually get into patients and clinic. So that's kind of my basis. Do you want me to answer the question that you were talking about, or just pass it along?
Nope, let's keep going.
Okay, perfect.
We'll get to that.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for sticking around before lunch. I'm Jess Flanigan, and I'm a philosopher, bioethicist, but don't hold it against me. We're not all so bad. And I wrote a book called Pharmaceutical Freedom, Defending Rights of Self-Medication, and talking about how the FDA and other regulators kill people.
Hi, I'm Niklas Anzinger, the general partner of Infinita VC and founder of Infinita City, right? So with the mission to expand access and accelerate biotech development, especially in longevity.
All right, so let me start with another question to go down this road with. And I'm curious, what do each of you think is the biggest restriction in place right now, or the most onerous restriction for patients accessing longevity medicines? And why don't we go reverse order this
It's
time?
hard to choose which one is the biggest one, right? So, you know, everyone thinks of the FDA. Of course, you know, there's things that are fine and we should continue doing. But it's also like the way we set up insurance, employer-sponsored healthcare. You know, many states have things that almost nobody knows about, like certificates of needs for starting new clinics, right? And then what also many people don't realize is that much of what we talk about, sort of, it's more of a sick care system than a healthcare system, right? So we see medical interventions only justified like for cause, like with terminal illnesses and things like that. That's like very hard-coded across the board. Like, since it's not just FDA, it's in sort of almost all healthcare policy, right? So not sure where to start to pick one, to be honest.
I agree with that sentiment. So, of course, we have pharmaceutical regulations, drug regulations, IRBs, regulations on medical research, scope of practice, certificate of need policies, medical liability standards. The main barrier, though, that unites all of these is that internal to our own psychology, everybody in this room, everybody that's reading the news when it comes to thinking about science and scientific progress, we accept these political conditions as the status quo. So we think that when we go about our lives in the health system, that the regulatory status quo and the policy status quo is the normal state of affairs, and that the thing that's new and aberrant is medical innovation or experimentation or progress. And that psychological barrier where we accept the current state of affairs as the status quo, even though that state of affairs involves massive amounts of restrictions on your bodily rights and your own medical freedom, that psychological disposition that we've all sort of inherited from the Stockholm syndrome we have to the medical regulatory system that we live under, I think that is the greatest barrier.
And I'm going to take a slightly different approach and say that some of the biggest barriers are actually at the clinical level and at the insurance level, because the front-facing people who deal with healthcare are clinicians. And one of the things that I think we, as a field, we need to do a better job of is making sure the clinicians understand what longevity medicine is. Because people go in, they might have an idea of what a longevity medicine is, they might see something in the news, but it's their clinician that actually makes a difference. And then you need insurance to make it viable to want to be proactive in your healthcare.
Interesting. So we have 4 very different approaches here with 3 people on the panel. We've got political limitations, we've got the clinical limitations, the insurance limitations, and our own mindsets limitations for this. Given all of that, let's start with you this time, Jessica, and talk about what are some ways that you think, what's the biggest initiative going on right now, or biggest thing that can be done to start addressing this?
Well, I'm so excited about all the research that everybody here is doing. One thing that I am especially excited about is a shift that we're seeing into patient-driven drug development. So seeing patients playing a greater role in setting research priorities, funding, navigating regulatory barriers, and advocating for themselves against political barriers. And so I think that's a really exciting area to focus on, both in terms of fundraising and investment, but also just the people who are the experts about what's going to best promote their own well-being are not the people who are the experts about science, the people who are the experts about law. It's the people who are experiencing their own well-being. And so letting patients have more of a voice in setting those types of priorities is a promising new development that I've seen. And you might think that this is like the disability rights movement and like nothing about us without us, things like that. And that's part of it, of course. But I think another part of it is just the market. So the price mechanism is an excellent way for patients to signal to people what they value the most. And it might not be what clinicians or researchers or FDA value the most. People might, for example, favor more cosmetic interventions over lifespan enhancing interventions or health span enhancing interventions. And I think we should be deferential to those types of decisions when people are putting their money where their mouths are and actually trying to invest in these things through the price mechanism as a signal. So that's what I'm most excited about, is patients taking a greater role in this space.
A radical idea. Todd, what do you think?
So one of the things that I'm kind of excited about is some of the changes we're starting to see in right-to-try laws. So right-to-try has always been this thing, you're terminal, you're trying a Hail Mary approach to solving these things. And now right-to-try laws are starting to be used to allow you to access treatments earlier. So it's kind of interesting because we have a system, right, where we have drugs being approved at the federal level, and we have states actually in charge of the practice of medicine. Again, I come back kind of to the clinicians and making it so that people can use longevity medicines earlier is actually, I think, a very important thing. Again, it feeds into the personal choice and not having to wait until you're dying of something before you can get access to medications or be more proactive overall.
And Niklas, perhaps you can make this a little more tangible for everyone, because I know you're involved, as you already mentioned, with the right to try legislation in Montana. Prospero, where you're based, I think is just a right to try region in general. What are you excited about as you see as a solution, and can you double click on this, on the new right to try legislations out there?
Yeah, sure. So right to try is one thing I've experienced that I think is very important to notice is that the idea of right to try is very popular across the entire nation, right? And that is the idea that patients should have the right to access treatments as long as they're proven safe, but not yet effective, right? So it's safe, okay? So that is something we can agree on that we want. And that's like, according to a poll by A4LI, has like 72% popular support across the entire nation. Now, what you might not notice is that language is specifically the Montana right to try. Right, the federal right to try, most right to try programs restrict right to try for terminally ill patients. Now, that is a very big problem in longevity, right, because we want to start earlier, right? We want to prevent these diseases before they happen by tackling the aging process. So this is why it's really, really important to recognize how important or watershed moment Montana really is in making right to try accessible to the broader public. Now, the other thing to recognize is sort of also for the policymakers in the room is that this model is very viable, right? So, and I talked about this in this other panel about it, the general idea that you should let states experiment. Like that was the original conception of the United States, that states are this laboratory for governance innovation. Right? And states have the right, or they are regulating medical services. Right? So the FDA is regulating drug development. And what we recognized in the Montana law is that you can make the distinction between those two, right? So there is no, so is this something that other states can also do, right? So we don't do drug development, we keep that in the hands of the FDA, but at the same time, we can really sort of in collaboration with sort of many of the federal regulations without too much sort of getting involved in those, have patients access these medicines that we're developing much earlier, and I think that's very promising. And the broader lesson is, again, so let the states experiment, and we can go further and explore in some other states, in Texas, for example, what else we can do, what other barriers we can remove, because, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of other barriers, right? So there's like licensing requirements, insurance, certificate of needs, and really experiment with new models. And this is maybe where Prospera comes in, right? Because it's just more streamlined regulation. So the idea is not that you're not regulated. The idea is that you have regulatory choice, right? And you have insurance markets that decide that balance kind of between risk and innovation. And one idea that I'd be particularly passionate about that we really need to make longevity succeed at scale is actually not a scientific breakthrough, it is insurance, right? So Rowan Hansen had the idea of coupling life insurance with healthcare provision, because that would give the healthcare provider an incentive to make you live longer, right? So they don't have the life insurance payment. So I think that is really a scaling mechanism. So again, it's easier to develop this kind of company because regulations are more streamlined and Prospera. But I think we can also, and there is ways to do it in the United States as well. So I think this is kind of where I would like to go.
Now, all of this makes intuitive sense to me, but there might be some policymakers in the audience who encounter objections to this, that there are some dangers with this kind of legislation that hold it up from passing. Let's try to steelman the case against this first in order to be able to provide them with the best arguments against that. Would any of you be able to jump in and steelman the case against, say, the Montana right to try legislation?
So we want to make the best case against the position that there is a right to try. I think that the case often will focus on concerns where, so all judgments of safety are normative judgments, and so there's no like scientific property where it's like that's safe, that's not safe. And then there's this question of like, who has the authority to make the normative judgment about safety? And one of the fundamental justifications for government is public safety, is that it's going to ensure safety for people, and that we defer to public officials to make this judgment collectively for all of us about how much liberty we should cede for the sake of safety when it comes to criminal justice, when it comes to healthcare, all of that. And so I think that the crux of the disagreement often is that public officials think that this is yet another domain where they have the authority to make the normative judgment about what's safe for people, and that individuals are not the best judges about what's safe for them, that there's a public standard that should be set for everybody, and that in virtue of the fact that they have that authority, they should also be very risk averse, because if something bad happens, they're going to be the ones that are held responsible for it. And so because of the institutional incentives that public officials face, they think that they have a duty to be especially safe when it comes to making that judgment, in the way that a parent would have a duty to be especially risk averse or cautious, because they bear all the downside if their kid gets hurt. Even if their kid taking some kind of a risk would maybe get the upside of the thrill of jumping off the diving board, and they're not thinking about the risk. But the parents, like, they only care about the downside. And so I think that from a public official's perspective, if you're a policymaker and you're thinking, like, what's going to be the barrier to me selling that? It is really risky for a policymaker to cede the authority to make that judgment about safety, and then to potentially take the blame if people make unsafe decisions and bad things happen to them. That's the hard thing. I get it.
I think that's a great steelmanning of the argument. Now, for everyone in the room, whether you're a policymaker or you're in the industry and face this kind of objection, let's provide them with some arguments against that. So, Jessica, how would you respond to that to begin with?
I think that the first thing to say is that we should shift it where we don't hold public officials accountable for this. where we enable individuals as patients to be empowered to make this judgment. And we already have seen this shift across the 20th century when it came to the adoption of the doctrine of informed consent. So throughout the 20th century, back in the bad old days, doctors would routinely lie to patients about, for example, a cancer diagnosis. And the doctor would say something like, you know, if it turns out that their mental health is harmed by knowing that they have cancer and they, you know, make rash decisions or they leave their wife or that something really bad happens, that would be on me and I would feel so horrible about not paternalistically misleading my patients. Or they would perform medical interventions without a person's consent, saying, if they refused it and something bad happened to them, I would never be able to forgive myself. And doctors took on all of this self-blame, and culturally they were held accountable in that way. Throughout the 20th century, we saw a revolution in the clinic when it came to patients' rights of informed consent, where patients began to assert their right and say, look, I'm not going to hold you responsible for my own decision-making, but I have the right to make decisions about my own body and my own health. And patients really reasserted that right in the clinical context through the doctrine of informed consent. However, at the same time that the doctrine of informed consent was gaining speed from the 1930s to the 1970s, we saw the expansion of the welfare state and the health systems and more regularization of medical regulation, and that was accompanied by a restriction of patients' autonomy within the market. And that restriction of patients' autonomy happened in such a way that sort of offset the gains that we made across the 20th century in the clinic. And what I'm saying is, if we did it before in the clinical context by claiming rights of informed consent, we can do it again to reclaim rights of self-medication and rights to try.
I think that's one great argument to start with. Niklas, what else would you throw out there?
Sure. I mean, to make the steelman first, right? So I would always say, the thing is, almost all new ideas are bad. Right? So
I don't think that's steel manning it. So
no,
how do we
that's
strengthen
actually,
that?
That's a steelman of the counter argument, right? So
Okay.
that's why people in like large corporations or large organizations in general are averse to doing new things, right? Because if you're doing something new and it goes bad, then you get blamed. Versus things that are already happening under the status quo that are bad, you don't get blamed for because you're not responsible. You're not the one who stuck their necks out. So that is just reality. So that's very important that we approach things like the Montana and the Right to Try program or any other kind of changes in like the legal or the regulatory system with an even higher degree of responsibility and conservatism, especially in the beginning, right? So be very careful, all right? We don't know, like we use what works and we can really agree works, right? And sort of develop sort of our own sort of policy mechanisms, scientific advisory boards, and sort of policing in our own industry that when given sort of some more leeway to do things, that we really, really use it responsibly. Otherwise, we are embarrassing the policymakers that made this possible in the first place. So we have to treat this with a very large degree of responsibility. And to give you one example of how we can do that, in the Montana law, we explicitly enhanced the requirements for informed consent. Right, because normal informed consent is just like signing a piece of paper that's like loads of legalese of many pages, right? And then, okay, you're fine. But we're saying, no, that's actually not enough. How about we have like an interactive discussion that's verified via video, that is stored in a place or is registered so it's auditable for others, right? So this way, you have, this is just a stronger and more robust informed consent. Did the person actually know that? And then others can check on that versus, okay, you just know that they tick the box. Right, so I think we can couple some of these new initiatives with like, hey, how can we actually make sure that the concerns, okay, are we removing safeguards? Actually, we're not, we're like streamlining things, but let's make extra sure that we do even better than what we currently do under the status quo, for example, when it comes to safety and informed consent.
Love it. Todd, what would you add?
I come back to insurance. And one of the things that is always an issue with insurance is, you try to get a treatment and you have to ask them to reimburse. One of the things that's interesting about the Montana Right to Try law is we've kind of taken the insurance out of the equation, right? So they don't have to cover their access to some of these treatments, which is a big deal because if you're an insurance company and you are risk adverse, you might say, well, what happens if it doesn't work? Then I have to cover maybe help them more because the condition gets worse or something like that. So, and you see this in single payer systems where a government doesn't want to take the risk because if something goes wrong, then they end up having to carry on the follow-on care, right? So I think getting insurance out of it has been helpful in the right to try laws, simply because it provides you a better chance that you're going to be able to get access to the treatment.
And so I want to give everyone here the opportunity to ask questions of this incredible panel, but the last one from me, before we do that, is we're talking a lot about the Montana right to try law. If it's successful there, how much do you think this can be a model for either other states or the federal level, or other initiatives that'll come after this?
So I see no reason why it couldn't be adopted by most of the other states, to be honest. The law is actually, really well worded and versed. I think at the federal level, so of course the practice of medicine is at the state level, drugs are approved at the federal level. I think there are some things that can be done at the federal level to allow right to try laws to proliferate more readily. And I think that's it's the biggest thing that can happen at the federal level. But most states, I think there's an interest to have these right to try laws at the state level, and I think Montana is an excellent model.
I'm optimistic about the Montana legislation. I think it's great anytime anybody's trying to give people back their medical autonomy. I think one great thing about the federal system is that we can have a lot of policy experimentation, and not just policy experimentation in terms of institutional design, but in terms of political design. So like Montana has its own politics. It's more Republican. We are very polarized. And different paths to advocating for self-medication might be more appropriate in different kinds of political context. And I think this is an opportunity for us to try not just what works in terms of effectively empowering patients to try, but also what works in effectively convincing lawmakers to come on board with the right to try. So in that kind of a context, people are going to have, I think, more reservations about things that involve vaccines, stem cell therapeutics, especially with embryonic stem cell therapies, biologics more generally, and they're going to have more reservations around that part of the argument. Whereas in other places where there's more support for reproductive freedom and people see reproductive rights as a human rights concern and bodily autonomy, it might actually be more fruitful to highlight the fact that this is making common cause with efforts to have increased medical autonomy with the reproductive health movement, where that would be a non-starter in other kinds of contexts. And then, more on the left, I think there's a lot of hesitancy and reluctance about commodification in markets. And people are very worried about like big companies and big pharma, and they have a lot of suspicion of the market. And so talking about like all of the potential for economic growth and development, for like longevity enhancement, they don't give a shit, because it's like they're kind of more anti-market over there. And so really like emphasizing, oh no, this is like a bodily rights, women's rights issue, making common calls with things that they care about is like a better way to build a bridge, whereas it might be better in other kinds of contexts to build a bridge across economic freedom, self-ownership, rights of self-determination with people who are more favorable to the market. And so one thing that I'm excited about in seeing like all of these different places where right to try is picking up is just learning about where we can make common cause with people based on things that they actually value without alienating people who don't share those kinds of values. So like I'm not taking a stand on any of that except to say that like it would be important for anybody who's really advocating for right to try having regulatory reciprocity across states to find a way to show that what worked in one state that has very different politics could also work in your state despite those political differences, because there's a foundation for empowering patients that everybody can get on board with, albeit for different reasons.
Yeah, so the federal level is very complex, right? So, of course, there's lots of things I'd like to change, and I suggest to change, but at the same time, many of these changes would immediately impact like interest groups. So Big Pharma, for example, what they don't like about right to try at the federal level is that patients then come to them and require them to, they arguing that they're now required to give them these drugs, right? So this is the biggest complaint about Big Pharma, right? And the way it works with insurance and all of that. So this is why these changes at the federal level are so hard, right? I'd like to change many of these things, and to some degree we need to, also because from the perspective of longevity and also because there's a strong moral argument for it. But yeah, at the same time, I think the most realistic path forward for us as an industry is to really prove it works in one state and then allow other states to adopt it, because that then makes it also easier at the federal level to change things, because we can get some of these pharma companies also involved in what we're doing at some of these state levels. And this way they're kind of gradually moving more towards the kind of solutions that we need.
Wonderful. All right, let's open it up to questions from the audience. And I saw this gentleman first.
Terrific panel. And I love your sentence of what's normal and what's abnormal. I'll use it with your permission. So another idea that came up in our field with drugs that maybe their major side effect is longevity, to go to from phase 2 to phase 4 trial, which means basically the company can sell the drugs to whoever wants it. Those people register, and you can find, actually with AI, it's going to be easier to find the right controls. So people can decide to buy this drug, and if there's signal, it's not going to be, first of all, it's going to be cheaper. It's not going to be after $1 billion investment in phase 3 trial. And if there's a signal, you'll get it maybe as fast as in a phase 3 trial. Is this something that you think would work politically?
Well, for a lot of things, people can already access them off-label once they've been approved. So if people can find like new compounds and therapeutics that are already approved.
But those are
that's
not
like a-
FDA approved yet.
I
They're
see.
just passing the phase 2 trial.
Right. So you're talking about things that are, they've passed phase 2, but they're not approved for any condition or
Right.
patient type.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's what I actually want to build off of Nir's question there. Also, let me preface this by saying I'm in favor of right to try legislation. You spoke about how we can mitigate the concerns from the regulator side of things, right? But I think there's also a challenge on the public perception side of things. Like if we do that, right, which again I'm in favor of,
Yeah.
there's a possibility that someone who tries early has a catastrophic, it becomes a news story, right? Like, what
Yeah.
are the ways that we can sort of mitigate this? I think the answer might just be we just need to have a better message, but it's a concern, it's valid. How can we address it? Yeah.
I think a great model is the HIV/AIDS patient movement through ACT UP in the 1980s and 90s, where they were on the steps of the FDA saying, hey, FDA, how many people do you kill today? Now, as it happened, there weren't effective therapeutics at the time that they were advocating for. And nevertheless, it was very effective for them to just be able to advocate for their right to try. And so these kinds of patient empowerment movements, or a less kind of politically radicalized one would be just like the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation advocating and self-funding research into their own condition. Another thing is just, again, resetting the rhetoric. So just think of it this way. Oh no, everybody, you're all drowning right now. But wait, Todd has a life preserver and he can throw it to you. But Niklas says that he has to test out the life preserver to make sure that it's actually going to really be an effective flotation device. And while he tests it out, you're going to drown. That is the situation. We are all drowning right now. And there are people who would like to build a life preserver for you. And then there are people who stand in the way. And for some reason, we've got it twisted. And we think the people making the life preservers are the baddies. And the people standing in the way are out to help us. And that is the mindset shift that we need to change in the way that we talk about longevity and life extension.
So with Montana's right to try, does anybody worry that not having insurance have to cover? Do you think that that's going to drive up cost ultimately and price out certain communities that actually need longevity medicine, and that's going to be a barrier to increasing patient access and actually getting good clinical data in communities that we don't typically see getting longevity medicine?
I mean, the way I see it is, the more barriers you have for providers to access the market, the less you can get anything to patients, right? So this way, patients don't have access at all, right? So another thing is this was something that was explicitly asked in the legislature in Montana, which we could address by allocating some of the funds also to some of those in need. And then the third point is that insurance can cover it. Right, so there's absolutely no problem with insurance covering it. They can cover it. Right? It's just it's the part that insurance has to cover it to get market access in the first place. Again, makes it really hard for new providers to come on board. So why not let them come on and then have insurance once they're convinced? And, yeah.
But the US drug market is driving innovation in a lot of sectors for the entire world, and there is a brutal trade-off between the size of the pie and the egalitarianism of the distribution of the pie. And what we're saying is, in the long run, it's better to have a lot of medical innovation, which benefits not only Americans and not only rich Americans, but the whole world forever, including poor Americans once that innovation is on the table. And if we have to pay the price of less equality in the short run for longer lifespan for everybody on Earth forever, I think it's a trade-off worth making.
So I'm not familiar with all of the details of the Montana law, but I have two concerns that I'd like to hear whether or not they're covered. One of them Niklas raised, which is the demands that come upon the company for, we want the drug. And it's not trivial, because I know of one case, for instance, where they had a limited amount of the product, and they needed to get through their phase 3 trial, and parents were calling up, my child is dying, we need this. And the CEO actually had to move and hide because of death threats made to him over the phone for failure to deliver the drug. That's the first one. The second one is the concern, and I think somebody touched upon it, but you give out your drug for compassionate use before it's going through phase 3 trial, and you have deaths, and you have deaths and other very serious side effects for patients about which you don't have a lot of data, if any, right? So now they're jeopardizing their ability to actually have the drug approved for the broader population, because the FDA is going to say, well, wait a minute, now we've got some real concerns here, because these 27 people here tried it, and 20 of them got really sick or died. So I'm curious to know how you mitigate against those two concerns.
I don't know if you totally mitigate it, but if you think about right to try laws, and let's use cancer drugs as an example. Most right to try laws, you were terminal anyway. So you gave the drug, they died, and you really are not making a lot of distinction. Certainly by providing longevity drugs or some other type of drug that's not where you're not in a terminal condition, that is a risk. But I also think that because you're doing it somewhat proactively, I think you have a better chance to do better surveillance on the drug when you're giving it to them. So one of the benefits of the access to the right to try in, say, the Montana case, is there will actually be a better chance to collect data and be able to provide more feedback in the regulatory process. So when the FDA comes to you and says, well, look, we have concerns, you will probably have collected better data in the first place.
So does the Montana law require that those people who obtain the drug on a right to try basis are required to be mandatorily required to have data taken from them to be part of a trial?
And it's also part of the enhanced consent. So that's all part of that process, yeah.
And briefly on your first point, so in the Montana right to try, the law is explicit that the provider is not obligated to give any treatments to patients. So that's kind of solved there already.
There's already something like that that's been on Capitol Hill for the last 2 sessions, and it's going to be in the next session, and that is the Free to Choose Medicine Promising Pathway Act, which is modeled after the 1992 path for AIDS. And basically what it is that after a treatment has been approved, past phase 1 and at least one phase 2, the sponsor can offer it to all comers. The catch is that you have to take your information, all your biological information, et cetera, and put it in a database, obviously privacy protected, so you're getting real-world data coming in that, of course, the sponsor can look at, not just, here's this test group and here's the placebo group. And about a year ago, we had a Senate room filled with patients advocating this thing. So it would do exactly what you're talking about in Montana, you might say, but in a really high-level enhanced way. Interestingly enough, I worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is after one phase 2 thing, but it's similar to what you're talking about, and that's what's been around for a while. Interesting enough, I wrote into that piece of legislation when I was working on it that it should cover the processes that constitute aging. It was taken out because some members of Congress thought it was too controversial. These guys whose average age is 80 are taking that out, so I couldn't quite figure that one out.
Why do you think
All
they
right.
thought it was controversial?
I don't know. I asked because I worked with the sponsor. I said, they took that out, my phrase, because it was too controversial? What the, no sense of self-preservation, I guess. But we'll see what we can do this time around.
Thank you. Okay, we have 50 seconds left, and so I'm going to just ask for a rapid-fire answer from everyone here. Is there anything we didn't cover right now that you want to put on the table for this audience to keep in mind going forward? Todd?
I have nothing specific, so I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
It's Jessica, but that's okay. It's later than you think, I would say.
Let's say visit us in Roatan.
Yeah, go to Prospera.
Maybe this September after ARDD.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for an amazing panel. Thank you for being a great audience, and enjoy lunch.